Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Akash Lush, and I'm joined by my co-host,
João Santos.
and this is Mildly Interesting.
Mildly interesting. No, seriously, just mildly interesting.
How are you doing today, Santos?
I am doing very good, Akash. How about you?
I'm doing pretty alright. But like last time, some people in the world are not doing so good. A bit of a light segue to a dark topic, so to speak. We're going to be catching up with the Military Junta, or military government in Myanmar. Following a military coup on Feb 1st of this year, have been in control of Myanmar's central government and have been brutally suppressing local government and protesting voices asking for the restoration of democracy. A report by the Human Rights Watch, HRW, basically accused security forces of deliberately encircling and using lethal force against crowds protesting for the reinstatement of the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi, hopefully I pronounced that right, on March 14th in Yangon, the capital city, where 65 protesters were killed by government forces. And since then, it has been no different. Following the army's power grab, largely peaceful demonstrations nationwide were met with increasingly brutal suppression. Since the army's takeover, at least 1,300 protesters and bystanders have been killed, according to the Association for Political Prisoners, or AAPP. To this day, the NLD, the National League of Democracy, who was Aung San Suu Kyi's political party, has been somewhat like a shadow government, right, Santos? They've sort of been trying to collect local rebels and the local armed forces, and this has become what some people would consider the start of a full-blown civil war.
I just want to point out, though, the political party that was elected before he was ousted, it's called, like you said, it's called the National League for Democracy. I just want to point out how much of a sick name that is for the party, by the way. Like it sounds like a DC movie kind of thing, you know? It's like the National League for Democracy is like
It really does, yeah. Some of these political party names are rad as fuck, as they would say.
But yeah, Mrs. Aung has been on trial ever since they ousted her from power, really, and is now facing up to 102 years in prison, which at a ripe old age doesn't sound like a good prospect, to be honest.
I mean, that's just overkill at this point. Why send her a century's prison sentence? Just say life in prison.
Exactly, and she's facing prison for like 12 separate charges, of which there's like corruption. There is election fraud and like sharing information to like that could be used by enemies. Let me just interrupt the best podcast in town with a part of editing to let you know that as we were preparing this episode for you, Mrs. Aung has been found guilty of 2 of 11 charges and sentenced to 2 years, reduced from 4. However, it's still unclear where she will serve her sentence, so keep posted for more information as it comes out on our website.
The justification that the military has given, I believe they're called the Tatmadaw, if I'm saying it right, is the official name for the Myanmar military. But their justification for the military coup was that they accused the government of electoral fraud. The government won a landslide victory in 2015 and did so again in 2020 November, but the military accused them of, I think, just general corruption with the electoral process, even though independent observers said that they haven't presented any real evidence for this.
Yeah, I just love the like conclusion a lot of like analysts and experts came to be honest, because they looked at this and they're like, well, she did have like fair elections, and so coup is probably like politically motivated. It's like, no shit, this is politically motivated. Like, of course it is. What isn't? What kind of coup isn't politically motivated anyway?
Oh yeah, we're just doing a military coup with the boys on a Saturday, just for fun. Yeah, we're not politically motivated at all.
She thinks I'm out cheating, just me and the boys. So because of that, we've seen a lot of public unrest. So there's even been, like, we've seen the creation of, like, paramilitary groups, which have been met with extreme force. I mean, the military in Myanmar is, like, has been known for their for shooting at civilians at times. It's pretty chaotic right there.
And we should mention that we're talking about the Myanmar military here, the Tatmadaw, and they have in the past committed genocide. The Rohingya genocide of 2016 and 2017, I believe, where pretty much thousands of Rohingya minority in Myanmar were killed and many were displaced from their homes. I believe 800,000 refugees across the border into the neighboring country of Bangladesh alone, and it created the world's, I think, largest refugee crisis at the time. And this was done under the NLD's watch, under Aung San Suu Kyi's presidency, which she received a lot of criticism for her sort of silence and inaction against what should have been her own military's actions against the Rohingya people. And then suddenly the military turned on her and proclaimed that she was the corrupt one, and that she was pretty much responsible for all the bad actions in the... Don't get me wrong, inaction in the face of genocide of your own people, that's pretty bad. Being the ones carrying out the evil and then just completely going, no, we're actually the good guys, we're saving this country from the people who stood by while we committed atrocities.
I wonder, actually, because in 2019 she came forward to a UN trial and she defended the military. In hindsight, given that there has been a coup and everything, do you really think she knew everything that was going on? In hindsight, can we blame her for what happened? Can we blame her that much like we did at the time?
From what I've read and the statements that have been put up by the government, don't think she ever had full control over the military. The Tatmadaw has been very independently working since Myanmar's independence. This is not the first time they've couped the country. The military in the past has taken things into their own hands, and Aung San Suu Kyi herself was under house arrest while the country was in military rule for about 20 years.
Yeah, 15 years she was in house arrest. That's insane.
Ah, okay. 15 years, yeah. I personally don't believe she was fully in control. I think she tried to project the idea that she was, but I truly don't think she knew fully what was going on, and that may have led to tensions, which led to the situation we're now in. So, the military junta, their main goal now is to try and create sort of an argument of legitimacy, where they portray that they are, the rightful rulers of Myanmar. But reports coming from within the country show that many locals view them as sort of a foreign occupying force, and military families have been advised to live within military compounds. And it doesn't help that Myanmar is struggling with what a lot of other countries are struggling with, which is sort of ethnic minority suppression by the majority. A lot of, they're called EAOs, ethnic armed organizations. There's a lot of them that operate within Myanmar as sort of de facto local governments, and some of them are fighting the government, some of them have arranged to ceasefire, some of them are helping the government in ways, so they're very sort of dispersed and they all have their own little agendas. But it's not helping that Myanmar is very fractured right now, and it seems like not only is there a divide between the government and the people, but there's a divide within the people themselves over what is best for them.
Yeah, what do you think is going to go from here, though?
It only resolves in external intervention, because the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, they disinvited the Myanmar junta leader. They disinvited him from the East Asia Summit, from the ASEAN's annual summit, and a meeting between ASEAN and European states, and ASEAN forces did just hold a joint military drill with Russia off the coast of Indonesia. And the Indonesian president has gone on record saying that although ASEAN's constitution upholds the right to not interfere in members' internal affairs, he states that there is a greater deal of upholding basic human rights, the fundamentals of good governance. So it seems like ASEAN is propelling towards sort of intervening in Myanmar somehow.
And the US and EU have announced sanctions in March as well. But I think that's really it, though, isn't it? Because is this really just... Isn't this just like a show of force, or like is something actually gonna happen?
I don't think so. Not anytime soon, at least. Everything right now is all talk. This military coup happened in February this year. It's now December. Only now we're getting words of like collective efforts from other Asian countries to disown Myanmar or the military junta specifically. It's gonna be a long time, I think, before anyone actually gets up to do something. Because there are other people within Asia who show similar autocratic and suppressive views. So, we're gonna sort of cool down after that hot topic, and we're gonna ask a maybe more heated question in a segment we like to call How Does This Animal Exist? Where we're gonna be showcasing our picks for dumb animals that we have to ask, how? How are you still alive?
Why, even?
Why, yeah. Why did God like you? Sandals, what is your animal for this week?
My animal for this week is the platypus. A platypus does not make any sense.
No.
They sweat milk through their armpits.
Do they actually? What the
They do. They use rocks to chew their food because they don't have any teeth.
Wait, what?
Right?
Oh my god, okay.
They're the only mammal that lay eggs. So they have normal mammal intercourse, so they have sex, and they still lay eggs. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
They can track prey through the heartbeat.
How? How?
They are venomous.
What?
And you won't believe this, but they glow in the dark.
This is just my, like, fantasy pet that I made in first grade. What is going on? This is ridiculous.
A platypus is basically God's way of just saying, fuck it. It just throws everything in. It's an animal that glows in the dark, is venomous, can hear your heart, and sweats through their armpits. Like, sweats milk.
And the thing is, right, that's not even everything. Because they have webbed feet, they have, like, a beaver's tail, they have, like, a duck bill. They look like someone, you know, like Mr. Potato Head?
Yeah.
They look like someone stuck, like, the wrong toy parts onto, like, a furry Mr. Potato Head.
It's an animal Frankenstein.
It
makes no sense.
It doesn't. My animal makes slightly more sense. I don't know, maybe you can be the judge. But it is called the Dumbo Octopus. So,
okay.
A little disclaimer. We don't know everything about the Dumbo Octopus. We haven't captured or studied enough species of it to know exactly, like, all of its habits, or even how many types of Dumbo octopus there are. But to describe it generally, they are like small, little circular octopi with, like, small, short tentacles and two flaps on either side of their heads that look like ears that they swim around with, which is why it gained them the nickname Dumbo Octopus. They live in the deep sea. So in, you know, the abyssal depths of past 1,000 meters below sea level, in the dark with, like, anglerfish and, like, those fucked up looking sharks, you have just this little guy just flapping his wings along. They don't have ink sacs, so they can't, like, spurt out inks in defense, but they can change their color. They've been known to change their color to, like, pink, or green, or blue.
And I was like, that's like the worst colors one can change to.
We used to think that they, like, propelled themselves by, like, jet propulsion or something. But no, they just, like, flap around with their silly little, like, ear-like fins. My favorite part about the Dumbo Octopus is how they breed. So how they make the babies. It's very interesting, because what happens is the male produces a sack of sperm, like a little like tote bag, if you will. And whenever they pass by a female, and, you know, they're apparently there is, you know how normal animals, they have, like, a mating season?
Normal animals, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you know how normal animals have, like, a mating season? Dumbo octopuses don't. they don't have a mating season.
They just do it whenever they want to.
Whenever a male comes across a female, they present this sack of sperm and go, here. Whenever you find a suitable location for children, you may use this. And then whenever the female octopus believe that they have found a suitable habitat, they then use that sack of male sperm, impregnate themselves, and then have some babies.
I don't even know how to react to that. It's like, here, good traveler.
Imagine if we did that as humans. Like, hello lady, I think we would have pretty babies. Have some of my genetic DNA until you are in a financially stable place to have children. And then you may use it. Like, what?
I got stuck though, back when you said they turn into green or pink.
Yes. They can change their color.
Now, I don't work for the army, right?
Right, yeah.
I don't know a lot about camouflage.
Yes.
But some people would suggest that pink and green are not the best colors to turn into if you're trying to hide from someone.
No, it isn't. But do you want to know the weirdest thing about them, which I personally don't, is why I put it in the how does this animal exist?
Why?
They apparently are everywhere. We haven't been able to study them well because we haven't been able to reach the depths that they go to, but we have seen species of Dumbo Octopus off the coast of Oregon, the Philippines, Martha's Vineyard, I'm not sure what that is.
It's just like a random person's vineyard, I'll imagine.
The Azores,
hey,
New Zealand, Australia, California, the Gulf of Mexico, Papua, and New Guinea.
They're just going everywhere, trying to scout for possible invasion routes.
It's amazing that these little things that literally go around the ocean by flapping their ears, they're alive and they're somehow everywhere.
I'm surprised the US hasn't gone, you know what, nuke 'em. I'm honestly surprised that hasn't happened yet. So now we move toward the more economic side of things. Inflation has been rising everywhere in the world, and it shows no sign of stopping. Before that, Akash, why don't you fill us in on what inflation actually is?
Wow, I'm glad you asked. In economics, inflation refers to a general progressive increase in prices of goods and services in an economy. Where the general price level rises, each unit of currency buys fewer goods and services. Consequently, inflation corresponds to a reduction in the purchasing power of money. So, the higher the inflation rate, which is the common measure of inflation, the more expensive things are to buy with the same unit of currency, basically. And this is a annualized percentage change in the general price index. So, when they say the inflation rate is 2.8%, that means that there was a rise in the price of goods and services compared to the value of currency for that period. Usually it's per year, so the same time last year.
Yeah, so the idea is if you go to the grocery store over a period of time with £1, you'll be less and less able to buy the same thing. Usually, a little inflation is considered good. It depends who you ask, but that's the common thought. Say around 2% is usually the mark that governments go for, just because, and amongst other things, it creates short-term demand, which is a good thing because it maintains economic trade and economic markets, right? Problem is, most countries are facing big inflation rates, so way above 4%, some of them, which is causing basically a lot of people to worry about another 2008, 2009 crisis, right? Why is this happening?
Well, it seems that, believe it or not, it's because of the pandemic. Pretty much everything else right now, this podcast has resorted to talking about the pandemic. But it does seem at least is agreed by most economists, that there are individual factors underlying the rise in inflation rates, but an underlying sort of common denominator for everyone is the pandemic. When the lockdown first started and mobility was restricted, there was a lower demand for goods and services because people were indoors, and there was a lower supply for goods and services because supply chains were affected by sort of, the mobility restrictions. Because of this reduced demand, for anyone who's taken A-levels economics, you will understand that this drives the price down, as well as sort of slows economic growth. But once mobility restrictions were lifted, demand skyrocketed, with people buying up goods and services to sort of enjoy the time that they lost within the lockdown. However, supply chains were only just adjusting to the new post-pandemic world we live in, and they are now under heavy strain to meet the economic growth that we're seeing. Because of the high demand and the supply struggling to catch up, this has driven inflation up around the world quite a bit. And obviously, there are individual factors that also increase inflation around the world, personalized to each country.
Yeah, so the key thing about this as well is, like you said, it's to each country, because everyone is suffering from it. Like Germany is on 5% inflation, the UK is around 4%, the Baltic states have gone over 7%, and the US even is on 6%. The only economy that seems to be doing well is Japan, who they have like a deflation, which is like a negative inflation rate. What can be done to like fight this? And that's like a question that is very, very, very controversial, because it depends who you ask. So a lot of people will tell you that you don't have to do anything. So that's like a very free market approach to the economy, which is you just don't do anything and the market will sort itself out. Despite the fact that a lot of people still believe this, and I personally don't, we've seen a lot of times this just doesn't happen. It doesn't work. So besides that, there's the measure that often gets used is decreasing the money supply. So that means decreasing bonds and increasing interest rates, which is, by the way, a move that has already like been teased by banks around the world, like the Bank of England, for example. Even though the European Central Bank has already said that they don't plan on increasing interest rates, at least for next year. But basically the way it works is if you increase interest rates, people will be able to buy less stuff, which basically allows the supply to catch up. And once the supply catches up, then we should see a decrease in inflation, hopefully.
I think a lot of economists also agree. By the way, some more inflation stats for you nerds. We've seen that the Eurozone saw an inflation of 4.1%, the highest in 13 years. Brazil saw a double-digit inflation in September, more than 10% over last year. Even in China saw a 1.5% rise in the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which specifically looks at how much more consumers have to pay for the same goods and services. It is a worldwide phenomenon, really, that most countries are being hit by. But I think most economists agree, one of the biggest dangers is people's reaction to the inflation. There is a factor in economics called inflation expectation, in which if people expect there to be inflation, they will change their behaviors in such a way that will drive inflation up. I do have a personal example from here in the UK. Santos, I think you might remember this, when there was a quote-unquote fuel shortage in the UK.
Don't talk to me about that.
So, in the UK, we saw that some petrol stations were having trouble receiving fuel because, as was stated by several government officials, there was a shortage of HGV drivers. Now, people from the government also said that if need be, in extreme emergencies, the military would be able to drive HGV vehicles and deliver the fuel if necessary. That there was enough fuel coming in. They just had a problem with the supply chain, like everywhere else in the world. However, the media and the public took this as a shortage of fuel, full stop. And we saw panic buying to the max. Like, we're talking about people filling up jerry cans after filling up their tank to the max when they didn't need to. And what we saw was many petrol stations just running out of fuel because they couldn't supply enough for the high increase in demand. This obviously drove prices up a bit and shortened supply for the rest of us. So yeah, that's just sort of a micro level example of what extreme demand with a struggling supply chain does to a certain good or product.
Yeah, so like I guess the point here, like, should we worry about this? Now, Does the increase in prices mean we should run to the streets and stock up on a year's worth of pasta and toilet paper again?
No, please don't. Please don't.
No, it doesn't. There's still a lot of uncertainty concerning like the impact of the pandemic. There's the new variant coming out, so we don't know what's gonna happen. And so for now, if you don't want to make it worse, just turn your heater off during the day, wear your masks to prevent everything closing because of the new variant, and please, just leave the toilet paper alone. And after that economic lecture, welcome once again to Dumb Questions No One Asks But Us.
My favorite segment.
This is my favorite segment as well. My question for today is, why do they sterilize needles for lethal injections?
Fuck me. Oh my god.
So why do you think that like needles are sterilized before lethal injections?
I mean, I don't know, man. Probably because they don't want, like, a dead person to get a disease at the last minute. I don't know. I just... that's such a good question. It's so dark.
See, I've got a nice theory for this.
Oh boy. Do I need my tinfoil hat?
I think you need your tinfoil hat again.
Okay, tinfoil hat's on, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, my theory is that people are not actually dead.
Oh.
So so they inject them, and then, there's like the whole mumbo jumbo of them, oh, I'm dying, and then they close the curtain, right? And then they're not dead. So I think that they're all sent to a slave camp and forced to work for Willy Wonka.
Okay.
Right? So essentially they're turned into Oompa Loompas.
Okay. There's so much to unpack here. So this conspiracy theory, Willy Wonka exists in this world.
He does. Of course he does.
Where is his factory?
Exactly. We don't know. That's probably, Area 51 maybe. Maybe that's why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars or the moon, Maybe Mars is the new Australia. You just send people there to work in, I don't know.
So they sterilize the needles and then give people, like,
a sedative.
Yeah, and then they close the curtain and they're like, surprise, you're not dead, just under new management, and then they're sent to Willy Wonka.
Under new management, yes. That is how it goes.
They turn into Oompa Loompas.
Yeah.
This is probably your most harebrained scheme yet up to date, but I like it. My dumb question is a little bit more lighthearted. Why are corn dogs called corn dogs?
Why are corn dogs called corn dogs?
As far as I'm concerned, corn dogs are just breaded sausages on a stick, right? Where did the corn come from, my guy? Do they secretly have corn in them? That would be kinda gross. Okay, this is my conspiracy theory. Everyone put their tinfoil hats back on.
Right.
What if it's spelt Q-U-O-R-N, like corn?
Ooh.
This whole time, they've been meat-free sausages, and the vegan companies have been testing their products for years on the random people who buy corn dogs at, like, I don't know, like fucking baseball games, I guess. Wherever you find corn dogs in the wild.
Corn dogs in the wild.
Yeah. What if it's corn dogs?
What if there was once a species of dogs?
Right.
That look like corn sticks.
Oh, like a kind of like Dachshund scenario where they're just like a fat log and like a neck.
Yes. And we've been eating dogs all along, and they're just gone now. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a corn dog? Exactly.
I don't remember.
Exactly.
Exactly. This is. I would say that's far out of reach. But did you see that thing where like the FTC found they couldn't find tuna in Subway's tuna melt sandwiches?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that.
Should we sue them for if there's no corn in the corn dogs or no dogs in the corn dogs?
Oh my god!
Like,
yes.
as far as I can tell, it's false advertising.
It is false advertising. This corn dog has a lack of corn and dog, so I think separate lawsuits. We're gonna get some sweet cash.
Yeah, if in 2 weeks' time we don't post, it's because we're rich now.
Now we will move on to Europe, where, once again, Russia seems to be on the brink of starting a conflict. The target of Russia's aggression is once again Ukraine. We saw back in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, the Ukrainian peninsula in the Black Sea, which most of the international community has refused to admit or cave into Russia's demands to see it as the legitimate owner of Crimea. But now, the US Defense Department, as well as the US Security Council, released satellite imagery and reports showing that Russia is once again building up military personnel and heavy military equipment on the southern border of Ukraine. Obviously, Putin has denied everything. Putin has denied everything and played the Uno reverse card, no, you're the one building up troops and everything. They have accused the Kiev government of building up personnel on the Russian border, and they claim that it is Russian territory, so they can do whatever military action they please within their borders. It is of no disturbance to NATO or the EU that Russia is building up 175,000 men on the border of Ukraine.
It just keeps coming back, doesn't it? It just Russia just doesn't know how to stop. At this point, you can't even see their agenda anymore. They just go through Belarus, they're going through Ukraine, they all around, they're just doing shit.
I think it's important to note the history between Ukraine and Russia, because the Russian people and the Ukrainian people have a tied and complicated history. Ukraine has been referred to many times as sort of Little Russia, and Ukrainians have been referred to as offshoots of the Russian people. Sort of similar how, Germans view Swiss Germans. But instead, when Russia ruled Ukraine, they heavily suppressed local identity and went as far as banning the Ukrainian language. So it's less of a brotherhood and more of an abusive relationship, where Russia likes to say that they love Ukraine and that land is rightfully theirs to share with the Ukrainian people. However, in the past, they've had a very heavy-handed approach into... They basically want to make Ukraine Russia. That's it. They want to annex Ukraine and make it Russia once again. They feel threatened, and I guess Putin, who's a very old-fashioned man, sort of grew up during the Soviet era when the Soviet Union nearly ruled half of Europe. Putin feels offended that both the NATO and EU are reaching out to the Eastern Europeans, so the Baltic states, Poland, and specifically Ukraine. There is a NATO military presence within these states.
It's a bit funny, to be honest, because Russia just casually puts 170,000 troops on the borders, and then when the UN answers and does pretty much the same, they're like, wait, you can't do that.
Wait, hold on, what? You can't do what I'm doing? This is my bit.
There's been talks, though. I read yesterday, and this is being recorded on the 5th, so I read yesterday that Biden and Putin are having talks to discuss the matter. And Biden has said that will make it very, very hard for Putin to do what people think he's gonna do. And I love how he say people think he's gonna do, he doesn't think he's gonna do it. It's just trying to shift blame. It's not me, it's them, right?
Listen, Putin, I don't think you're gonna invade Ukraine. This call is just to, reassure other people. I'm still friends with you, Putin.
But he went on to say that the US would respond with high-scale economic measures. And I'm just I'm not one to propone to military intervention, because that never ends well. We don't want another war or another Cold War or whatever. But how do high-scale economic measures actually do something? Because the EU has posed sanctions on Belarus, for example. Nothing's happened. They've been implementing the same sort of measures in Russia since the Cold War, really. And this is still happening. So how effective can this be? I don't know. I have no idea.
It is quite interesting. It's going to be very controversial, me saying this. with the way like Biden phrased it, didn't you think it was very like Trump-esque the way he explained what he was going to do? Because he said he said like the direct quote is that Biden warned he would make it very, very difficult to go ahead and do what people are worried he may do. Like,
Yeah.
it's such like careful footing. Like, I think the US wants to project that they still are open for a diplomatic solution to all this. But Russia is past diplomacy at this point, I think. The thing Russia wants is either more land or more influence. And the only way they're gonna get it is if NATO and the EU step down. Ever since the Crimea annexation in 2014, Russia has been supplying Ukrainian separatists in their southeastern provinces, I believe. And now they're building troops on the border. I have to say, I think Russia's got the upper hand here. This is like a pissing contest, basically. It's like the Cold War, where each side shows off like what they can do and what they're gonna do. And it honestly seems like Putin is winning. For now.
I think when it comes to that, I absolutely agree with you, because I think that the US, whatever they do, they have that much more scrutiny. You know, like, they can't just do something and people are like, yeah, okay, that's fair. But Russia, they can do whatever they want, because not whatever they want, but like they can do much more than the US can, or like any other European democratic state. Just because, well, who's stopping him?
That is a big thing though in Russia, that a lot of TV and news is controlled or at least censored by the state. So they have sort of a heavier hand in influencing their, I guess, diehard population than America does.
They don't even have a heavier hand. They're just punching it. They control everything.
It is a very tense situation right now, and this call between Biden and Putin, who knows what could happen, but I guess it all depends in what cards they lay on the table, because this essentially is a poker game, and one of them has to fold. So
yeah, we'll see how it what happens in the next few weeks.
And with that wraps up Episode 2 of Mildly Interesting. Hopefully you were mildly interested. If you were, please do follow us on all our social medias. They will be linked in the description, wherever you may find it. We've got an Instagram, we've got a Twitter, we've got Facebook. Follow us on Spotify, obviously. Subscribe to us on YouTube. All that good promotional stuff. And we will see you the next time something in the world happens, which is in 2 weeks, hopefully. But yeah, have a good evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are.
See you.
Mildly interesting. No, seriously, just mildly interesting.